Coming to a cinema near you, the most graphic of horror films, Day of the Thomases.
Well, some time back, I've forgotten how long back now, I came across a Thomas which didn't work out of the box. It was from a Risky Rails bridge drop set, Trackmaster one, and I did a repair on it, and in the end I've actually repaired it wrong, and it sent me on a great big learning curve of how these are put together and fixes for these. Because I'm a Thomas collector, I've got the luxury of a whole bunch of other Thomases. That's from the Ultimate Trackmaster review I did. Those two are from the two shake bridges you saw in the beginning of the Ultimate Trackmaster review. I've got a whole bunch of these ones here, which are ones from those very inexpensive starter kits. And of course, at the background there, I've got a whole bunch of shake bridges. Now, each one of those sets has got a Thomas inside. Let's pull it all apart and let's have a look at what's going on with all these Thomases. You know, on the day that I was doing this video of all these Thomases, it was earlier in the day I did the video of the Adventure Time stuff. My daughter loves Adventure Time. And this toy broke real fast. About half an hour up in the house after I did the review. Jazzawares. That's who's behind this. You don't need to know any more than that. Jazzawares. I mean, I feel sorry for the Adventure Time people that have been caught up with a company which has got a record of making really poor toys. I paid a lot of money for this thing, and I did a huge rant, and I might just go inside for a bit and have a bit of a break because I need to be in a far calmer mode to look at all this Thomas stuff. Okay, I've got a very impressive lineup of Thomases here. I'm impressed. Up the back are all what I'm calling the shake bridge Thomases. The bulk of those are virgin. One or two of them have been used and played a very short time. The next line is what I'm calling the starter pack Thomases, and I'm pretty sure all those are virgins. Maybe one of them's been used a little tiny bit. This is the Thomas from the Risky Rails Trackmaster set, and this is the Thomas which has basically caused this video. I need a bit more to say about that. This one is of course the one which was featured in the Ultimate Trackmaster one. This is a old TOMY Thomas, so we're going to look at the way they're put together, and this one is a fake TOMY Thomas, and we're going to look at the way that's put together, and hopefully we're going to learn something along the way. Well, this is the Thomas from the Risky Rails bridge drop. I put an X on him so I wouldn't get confused, and I just need to show you something because I made a mistake in the way that I fixed this Thomas. There's actually a different way to put this all back together. Well, put a battery in. I can still see this Thomas works. When I first got it out of the box it wasn't. And if you recall, I pinpointed a metal connection which hides underneath this plate here as being a part of the problem of why Thomas stopped working. And I'll come in and pull that little plastic plate up. Quite easy to get out. Now we're looking nice and close, and there's this metal that comes out of the motor, and this other one is connected to the other bigger pieces connected to the negative of the battery, and there's a connection there. Now if this is put together correctly, that piece of metal there would be slid inside there and go through and down, and that would be the way it connects. But this Thomas was put together incorrectly and it was riding off on top, and the way I fixed it was to reinstall this plastic plate, and it basically gave positive pressure down. Now if I was going to come in and fix this properly and get that metal tongue, as we'll call it, down through the hole there, it's a much bigger job. I've got to pull out the motor here. There's a couple of security screws that I have to pull out. I'd have to pop this off. I think these come off quite easily, I think. There. And a few people have commented to me that for them it was a fairly common thing to do, was to come in and fix up the way the motor connects here. And it all depends on how many you buy. You might have someone who has hundreds and hundreds of these, and they may come across this far more frequently than someone who only has a few. In fact, some people would probably never ever see this problem. I mean, I've got quite a few of these toys and I look at a lot of stuff, so the chances of me finding a small problem is much higher. And for me, I was asking, I wonder what the real purpose of this little plastic cover is. Is it aesthetics, to cover a connection, or is it like a backup ploy to make that connection if it's not made correctly in the first place? Well, let's take a look at this Thomas, and we might be able to see that connection made correctly. I'm hoping, if I can get it apart. Come on. A little bit different there. Well, the last one had the blue cover, and this one's got a red cover. And coming in to get that little tricky piece of plastic out, if I can. Ooh. Oh, it's going to play up on me, isn't it? Come on, you little piece of nightmare. Out you come. This one's quite tricky to get out. I've got it. And now we can see that tongue of metal is down through the hole, and that's what makes the connection there. I suppose it's a matter of one's pulling up against the other to make it a good positive connection. And like I said before, to do that, if you go on riding on top, you've got to take the whole motor out to pull a full pull down of the motor. Take the motor out, insert that little tongue in there to get it back to the way it should be. Well, now I'm going to go in and pull all those guys apart. I'm going to expose that connection on all these Thomases. It's going to take me a little bit of time to do that. Next time you look at these, they'll be all pulled apart. Well, they're all pulled apart, and there are some very, very interesting things going on. Up on the back row are all the Thomases from the Shake bridge sets. You can see that little piece of metal has been put in correctly. These are made correctly. These are all marked as Mattel 2009 Thomases, although that does not give you any indication of when the toy was actually assembled. So that's really good news. We've got a whole bunch of Thomases there which have been made correctly. And to me, what defines this Thomas is a couple of things. It's got a different face. It's got bolder red lines on the top there. It's missing the lamp detail there. It's got a screw here, which is how it attaches its top piece, and it's got a white motor. And if I go back to the Thomas, which is from the Risky Rails bridge drop, we're basically looking at the same style of Thomas. It's got all those features that I've just mentioned. And now we're going to look at the front row, and these were from, what would you call them, starter sets. And I think one thing that characterises this series of Thomases, they all had the Botox eyes. They also had this middle wheel that you pull out to pull it apart, and the line detailing was thinner on these, that detailing on the top there, and it had a lamp on the running plate there. 7 of these have a piece of wire and a soldered joint. 4 of these are like the ones at the back there. They've got a little piece of metal that goes through a hole, and there's one which is like a mishmash, and that's a very special one for a number of reasons. And looking down at the soldered joint ones, these are all marked as 2009 Mattel Thomases, and again that doesn't tell you when these were made. Here are 4, and we'll call it the bunny down a hole method. Again, they're all 2009 Thomases. And then there's this one which is all by itself, and it's a little bit different to everything else, and as a collector I get a little bit excited when I find things like this. It's 2009. It was found with the Botox-eyed Thomases, or the ones in the inexpensive starter kits, or starter sets, which are excellent. And if I look underneath, this piece here, at the front here, has actually been painted. And it's been painted red. And if I scratch here, I can remove a bit of that, and I can see, well, it was a blue piece originally, and they've gone and changed it. And if I drag up another one from that same Botox-eyed series, and here it is here, and you notice it's got a black motor, and if I go underneath, that piece is blue. So there's been a transition, or who knows what causes this. And if I go to the Shake Bridge Thomases, remember all these are 2009 series Thomases. This is very different because, well, it's all red underneath, but that wheel stays in there, it's rigid. It's different the way the top adheres or gets attached to the running plate here by that screw there. So there's quite a few changes in that Thomases, and that's, at the time of making this video, that's the one you seem to see it getting about. But getting back to my very special one, I like it because, well, obviously it's different to the others. For some reason they've come in and painted that. Who knows? Like I said, you can't tell the exact time when these were made, or maybe there are codes under here which can pinpoint that. I don't understand their coding. There are other codes here which would be obviously linked to manufacturing. If someone maybe can decipher these codes, that'd be very interesting to know. And there's a close look at the code, and I know there'd be some in my audience who would be amazing code crackers. They've got the ability far beyond the normal human being, and I bet you they'll be able to tell me what those numbers mean. Well, as I said earlier in the video, let's take a look at a TOMY Thomas. It's sort of different to the Thomases you get today for a number of reasons, and I'm sure my audience will be able to list the reasons why. Let's have a look underneath. Let's see. It says TOMY, made in Thailand, 1992. This was given to me by the ladies who collect for me down the road. I do not know its history. And what's different about this style of Thomas is you pull the wheel to then release the top piece. It's quite a very clever little design there. There's no need for screwdrivers, quite simple. And then when we look inside, it's like the black motor. I have to pull, that's different. There's no screw here for that little plate. Let's have a look underneath there and see what's going on and that connection and the way they do that motor. Actually, before we go there, let's just see if it works. Ah yes, the distinctive TOMY rattle. That little cover piece is held in with glue. It has been glued in. You can see the remnants of the glue which has welded the plastic together. Well, here are those three bits of plastic. There's the one from the TOMY, and it's got no tabs on it. There's the one from the Shake Shake Bridge Thomases, or the Thomases of today, as when this video was made. And it's got those little tabs. And there's the one from the Botox faced Thomases from those starter kits, and it's got the tabs as well. Well, here we are looking at this 1992 licensed toy. It's a TOMY Thomas, and it's got the rabbit down the hole method. That's interesting because I thought maybe it would have been the soldered version of this join. And what's interesting, now I get a bit of a closer examination of this toy, is that it's got some battle scars. It's certainly been used a fair bit. I can just feel it in the way the wheels are. Look at the axles. Everything looks well worn here. It's got some broken plastic there. But as you saw, it still works. It's soldering on. It's never going to die. I often wonder, imagine if toys could talk and they could tell you of the adventures that they had in their life with whoever they were with. And I think that's the mystery of toys, is that you'll find some which have been basically hammered to death, and there are other ones which have been left almost pristine. You think, wow, you know, which toy has had the more fun? And what's notable also about the TOMY Thomas is it's got what many people would class as the classic Thomas face, and that's a bone of contention which really you could start huge arguments about the faces and how it's changed over the years, but many people will cite that face as being the winner. Don't be fooled by this Thomas Tank's good looks here. We're dealing with a fake clone toy. Now I've got it in my hands. I can express that this thing feels very different. It's got very sharp edges on it compared to the Thomases that I've had in my hands so far in this video. It's got a classic face. It's basically a TOMY rip-off. It's got different coloured traction wheels. There is absolutely no licensing detail on this Thomas. The way the top clips on is totally different. There's no safety measurements to keep the top on, and I've shown that in the video previously. It works, but it's got a totally different sound. It is much quieter than the Trackmaster and the TOMY Thomases. And the way these are assembled is totally differently. You don't see wide connections like that on the other Thomases that I've looked at. And this is the weak part. Quite often you'll find that these parts will come off very easily. They're usually very poorly soldered. And if we go along and I pull the battery out, you'll see that it's totally different in design. It's got a spring here as a negative on the battery. And it's funny, it's once you start digging around on these clone Thomases, you start to see that it's nothing but trouble. It's one of those things, it's initially impressive, but once you have a good hard look at it, all it's going to do is cause confusion and delay. Possibly one of the best uses for a fake clone Thomas is you can grab the face from the front and put it onto the more modern CGI'd faced models that Thomas and Friends do. That's if you're after a classic face, and really I don't want to endorse this sort of stuff because it's basically rubbish. It's cheap and nasty, and it's really sad that I so easily find this in shops in the city where I live. Well, I've certainly got a lot of things to put back together now. I've found some good information out about these toys, but I've got one final thing to say before I finish off. Well, here we are, again looking at the Thomas from the Risky Rails Bridge Drop, and I know it's that one because I put that black X underneath there. And if I was going to do a Sherlock Holmes look at this, and the reason why it was faulty right from the start is I'm actually going to look at that sticker. Remember I spoke about the sticker and how it was very weird to see it riding high, and it's obviously been put on just in the wrong spot. It's actually very rare to see that. I mean, I've got a bunch of these, and I can see from all my other Thomases that sticker has been put on in the correct spot. But that's me being Sherlock Holmes. I mean, I'm being hypothetical here. I don't know how these are assembled. Let's make an assumption it's one person who does the assembly of these, and they've got all the parts around them. And as you remember, inside there was that connection that was done incorrectly, and it's an easy mistake to do. I dare say that people are under a certain number to make a certain number per hour, or else you're out of the Chinese factory real fast. But for me, seeing the sticker is possibly an indicator that we're dealing with a new operator here, someone who's not experienced. But hey, who knows? Maybe you guys out there know. Maybe someone's been to the factory where they've made these and seen how it's done. I'd love to go there and have a look. I'm very curious to see one of these places. But look, as you know, on YouTube, I look at stuff very critically. But I'm also very fair. I say it as it is. I do not do glorified polished ads for people. If I see a fault, I say it, and that's the way it's always going to be with me. And look, I'm not being critical about the Thomas people here. I mean, some people interpret these videos sadly incorrectly. I've just seen a whole bunch of Thomases which have been made correctly, and that's something I really needed to point out. I've had a few people come along and they say, they leave a spray of comments. Oh, I've had a whole bunch, which didn't work. Well, I'm sorry, I've got to see it. You've got to see it to believe it. Sometimes you can get people who come in and they tend to want to be fairly malicious, and sometimes they're doing that to maybe create a bit of notoriety, and I've got to be very careful in the way people comment on these videos. From what I can see, there's some good stuff going down with these toys, and I've had a very, very thorough investigation from the Thomases that I own. You may recall I showed a duck and the battery's in there, it doesn't work, and someone suggested to me in the comments from the other video related to this one, if you give these a sharp tap, sometimes they'll come in to play and start to work. So let's do that. A couple of sharp taps. Okay, that was a couple of very sharp taps. Nah, still dead as a duck. I'm sorry, guys. One of these Thomases ain't like the other. One of these Thomases is not the same. Can you guys tell me which one is different before I get a DMCA? As always, guys, thank you for watching. I certainly learnt a lot about these toys in this video. I hope you did as well. Bye for now. Have you ever had it in life where you find out something and then it uncovers a whole bunch of other mysteries and weirdnesses?